Here we go. I
I'll
think
do
we
my
are good
best
to
to
go.
relay chat messages whenever there's a bit of a lull too.
Yeah, that would be great. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Um, Looks like we're all set, so I will jump into it. What's up, guys? Thanks for joining me today. This is going to be a cool one. Um, so we are going to do a demo on value sculpting, which is just one of the coolest little putting lightning in your hands art tricks that I can teach, and I have a technique for this that hopefully will be intuitive, but also unlock some higher levels of realism and drama. Some focus on edge control, which just changed everything for me with how I render, some brush stuff. So I think that'll be really cool. And I also want to do a bit of Q&A and program tour for my mentorship program, Concept Art Academy, but also want to open things up for Q&A. So if you're here because you're considering that, it's a big deal to join, so I always want everybody to know what they're getting. So that's what this is too. So questions in the chat. My awesome team is here to bounce those to me as I paint. So this should be a fun one. But I will share my screen and we can get into it. Cool. Just making sure this guy is showing up. So I've done this sketch of this very creepy bald dude. I don't know exactly where this came from, but I was just kind of feeling this. I think it's going to be fun to describe this guy because he's going to have all of these knobby forehead and face features. So this is a very good subject for what we're posting. But you know what I realized this morning is this guy kind of reminds me of that creepy yellow guy in Sin City, that early 2000s Frank Miller just bonkers like comic book movie. So anyway, a little more background than you asked for here. But to start with, I'm going to make a copy of the sketch first of all, and we'll just fill in a silhouette. Sticking with grayscale today, but it might look black, but it is a very dark gray. Hopefully you can see this, but I'm like barely leaving the sketch visible. I just want it to be like um, you know, barely there, but something we can see so that it's just there as a reference, but I don't want to actually see line art um, as we go. Just making sure I'm centered here. 1 second. Yeah, all good. All right, so since I have a copy of the sketch, I'm just merging the sketch onto this so I have one silhouette. All right, let's start painting something. I'm going to grab a higher key gray, something like this. And my brush, we're gonna pretty much only use standard round brush, like nothing especially magical about this brush. It's gonna be a little more about philosophy and what we do to build up tones and control tones. But one thing I do want to try, and I am totally nabbing this from Christoph Young, who is awesome, but adding noise to this just for this tiny bit of grain. I'm kind of fond of that lately, and it adds something. One other little like Photoshoppery that I'm going to do is clip this layer to the silhouette so that I can just paint within this and it will show up. All right, so this is actually similar to one of the demos that we do in the painting module of Concept Art Academy of the mentorship, but this is kind of my whole foundation for rendering, especially organic things like people. Is, you guys are all familiar with that value sphere, right? Where it's like a highlight and then like a bounced light on the other side. So makes his head look like a shiny bowling ball. But like that kind of thing, just light falling off to shadow and then bounced light. It's essentially what we're doing here. So if I imagine my light source coming from here, and I think of the face as planes, then it'll sort of govern like where I want values to be lighter and darker. So that's just very big picture sense how we use light and dark to make this guy's face seem like a three-dimensional thing. So, to build up tones, I like to use very low opacity and pretty low flow. So this is 20% for both. So that if I tap once and kind of scrub around, we get a like barely there little hint of gray. But if I tap again, it like it layers that. It keeps adding more and more so that every time I pick the stylus up and put it back down, it's like that effect gets more and more and more. And suddenly we're like on our way to this round head, you know. So that's the idea. It's all about control, right? So lowering flow and opacity makes all of these things develop really slowly. It's like you have your hands on the steering wheel. And if you're trying this and the tones are like not controlled, just lower these values. Go to 10%, go to 5%. Just keep going lower and slow things down until it feels like you are getting the effects that you want. So as my first pass, I'm trying to just do some shapes. In fact, I like doubled that one and I'm gonna undo that because I really like thinking of this kind of rendering as shapes because that's what our eyes want to see first. That's why you can like instantly recognize the silhouette of a popular character, or it's why that pile of laundry on a chair in your bedroom scares you in the dark and makes you think it's a person. It's just our eyes get shapes. So just with these first few bits of like description, you know, these shapes of the shadowy eyes, this like knobby brow ridge, the top of his head, the cheekbones, his nose, all of those are shapes that like honestly we need little else to feel this as a face. Now, obviously there is some like practice and knowledge to this. Like I've just painted so many faces that I kind of have these shapes memorized. But you can also conceptualize this and sort of logic this out too. Just like think of the face as planes. Like what direction is this surface facing? And the more it's facing our light source, the more we want that value to kind of climb the scale to be brighter. So just towards value, brighter, away from towards light, brighter, away from light, darker, which, you know, what could be simpler? Cool.
We've
As
got
like, yeah, yeah, please.
someone's asking, could you share some more info about how you got into anatomy as an anatomy illustrator? So they're
Yeah,
intrigued, wondering if you'd recommend it to someone.
I really would. That's perfect because a lot of what I'm doing here is kind of just is repetitive. So perfect. I really would recommend that. So I have been a medical illustrator for much of my career, and that's what like my formal training is. So what drew me to that is 4 years of a graphic design like undergrad major where I was in a lot of studio art critiques, kind of, you know, listening to discussions of I don't know, I got tired of all the like this random blob of paint is so cool because of X, Y, and Z when I just wasn't that impressed with it. Like, this doesn't look like anything real. This doesn't look like it took technical skill. So I basically wanted to go find the most technically demanding thing. And that's sort of where medical illustration came from. Um, if you are kind of that mindset, if you maybe I've actually come to appreciate that sort of more like frou abstract, expressive side of art in the years ahead. I think I've matured. But as a 20-year-old, I'm like, that's not real. Let's paint real stuff. And that's kind of the mindset I was in. If you're kind of, and I'm not saying you have to be like that attitude, but if you're a technically minded artist who likes just absolutes of that's either accurate or it's not, if you like painting things realistically and describing complex concepts with your visual storytelling, I think that's sort of the ultimate. And another thing that drew me to that is it made me feel all cool, like I was um, an anatomist artist like Da Vinci, right? Because in those graduate programs, you actually do, cadaver dissections with medical students. So it's intense, but it's fascinating. The whole medical world, I've gotten to observe surgeries. I've basically gotten to go places that a C student graphic design major should never have gotten to go because I was good at art. And that's true for all of you guys too. So if that appeals, go for it. And I will also level with you that somebody once told me that if you add medical in front of any career, you can probably charge more for it. So it's also a pretty lucrative side of the art world to get into. Now, I'll spend a little more time on this just because I do need to talk about the demo. The thing that sort of got me out of it is it never quite scratched that creative side well enough for me. Like I felt like I was dream career adjacent, which is such a strange thing to even complain about. But like it was stressful too. And there's only so many spinal cords and brains and hearts you can illustrate before they all start looking the same. So 14 years of that felt like enough. And it was time to do the like cool, imaginative, just the stuff I really wanted to do, the stuff that 9-year-old me had always dreamed of. It was time to make that happen. So that's why I left, but I still, have nothing but great things to say about that as a career path. Cool. Good question. And
There's been a
yeah,
couple questions related to the demo actually.
yeah, that's perfect because I've kind of gotten farther down the
Cool.
rabbit hole here. Yeah, what's up?
So someone's wondering, could you give a quick advice on when and why you use so many layers? And what's the thought process between the first harsher gray and the lighter and softer one you're adding now?
Cool. So actually, for now, realistically, I am only on these two layers, like the silhouette and the value. This document has lots of others because I did a practice run on this. So there are layers here that aren't being used. I'm gonna maybe add like a color lookup at the end, but for now, it's just these two. As for like um starting with shapes and then it starts looking softer. I actually haven't really changed the brush or anything. That's just sort of what happens naturally as we layer these tones over and over again. Every one of those overlaps sort of starts to blur that harsh edge that we initially saw. So it's sort of like if we layer these textures enough times over one another, it starts to kind of get fuzzy and gauzy. But I will actually start paying closer attention to edges in just a second. But I hope that answers that. It's actually nothing changed at all. That's just sort of what happens as this process plays out. As we add more and kind of layer, that sort of happens naturally, which is really cool. But that's actually a really good segue to the next thing that I want to talk about. which is edge control. And I mean, I want to like say that word and have it like echo, like it's so important and was such a game changer for me. And also something that it seems to be one of those instant level ups with the artists who I work with. Once this really clicks, it just unlocks stuff. So I love this. Basically, the idea is mixing really harsh edges. So, well, let's talk about soft edges first. So imagine that value sphere. This guy's like pretty spherical head. It's got these soft gradients, like going from a highlight and gently with a smooth gradient kind of curving away to shadow, like a slow, gradual fall off, right? But we have other parts of the body where we want to see a jump from light to dark. Like, so for example, there is a sharp plane change under this corner of the nose. So with my brush, I am trying to just really cut a very sharp value change here. So see how like sharp that line is basically? Wherever plane changes like that happen. So for example, like this nostril curves around and then it's a very sudden change in direction right here, where the lips would change planes. So, like this lip tucks in, but then this one comes back out. It's this harsh angle, those like right turns, right on that turn, that's where we want edges to just jump, to be cut. So, actually, this is the first time in the demo that I'm actually sampling other colors. I've been painting with that single gray for the whole time. But I want these edges to start feeling just razor sharp in a few areas. And any of my Academy alums who are here will know that this shape that I'm painting is one of my favorite things. It's the arcane chevron. Anybody who loves Arcane, and I'm betting that's all of you, take a second look and look at all of the faces, and this shape is on practically every one, especially female characters, this little chevron shape. So that's another hard edge. Lips, basically any one of these little microforms, like this cool little saggy jawline. There's a hard edge between this form and this form. And just with that attention to edge control, it makes these little forms feel so real. And I absolutely love that. It just feels like you're sculpting. Actually, what a great term, value sculpting, because this is that moment when it actually does feel like shapes are happening, like real things are being formed. It's that fundamental magic trick of value painting is that moment when, whoa, that looks real. This looks like the thing I am trying to paint. Um, Good question. And that was a long monologue. Any other questions, Celine?
Yeah, there's another one. It's sort of the opposite of what's happening right now, where someone's saying, "Do you ever paint the figure without a predefined line drawing? If so, what would the process look like?"
That's such a cool um, question. I usually have some kind of line art sketch before I start. I have done some like pretty experimental things like that where I don't really even have a plan and I just start painting value shapes. That's like a very Anthony Jones creature design. He sort of designs and paints at the same time, which is so cool. I don't do a lot of that, but you definitely can, and it's just a thing that I haven't personally practiced that much. But I like designing other things that way, like just with shapes immediately. Like no need for line art, no need to kind of do all of these things twice. Let's just kind of have the value. and the design happen at once, and it's a really dynamic feeling process. It's like you're designing and painting all at once, which usually in my brain is two separate things just because there are slightly different priorities and concerns, and I'm a big believer in for like, artists who are still developing things to sort of compartmentalize to and we're all still developing by the way, but to kind of solve one problem at a time so that we don't get buried by the daunting nature of hey, paint a realistic looking person, like, or paint some epic environment. We have to break that up into bite-sized pieces, or it will be so paralyzing, right? Um, Good question, though. That might be something that would make a cool YouTube live with absolutely no guarantee of good results, but would still be really interesting. Cool. So as I go, I'm just kind of refining and sharpening edges. Like what I love about painting some gnarly older dude is you can't possibly over describe like every weirdly too defined wrinkle and saggy under eye area just seems to make this guy more like the character he's meant to be, which is awesome. It's in other characters like, beautiful people or uh, younger people. We have to be really light-handed because every bit of description, every little carved out value cut adds to that sort of gnarliness, for lack of a better word. It kind of makes all of these forms a little too like visible. And but with this guy, let's go wild and he will just keep looking more, I don't know, darkly sort of looking up through his brow ridge, which is such a great menacing kind of vibe. I love that. But getting pretty far along, like a lot of the main forms that I wanted to describe here are looking pretty good.
We got a question about brushes.
Yes.
Can you share a bit about the brushes and the brush settings you're using, and how are you getting a mix between soft and hard texture? And sort of like how do we get the brushes pack or
These are awesome questions. So, um, again, like this one is definitely one that you already have, but we do have a brush pack that I will ask our team to paste in the chat. That's free. It has some other stuff that I use, fun brushes. This one is standard round, but let's check out settings. I have shape dynamics set to pin pressure. So like light touch is a small mark. Let me paint this really. And hammering down makes it bigger. But well, and that sort of ties into your other question. Oh, and by the way, there's no like transfer settings, so just opacity is entirely dictated by like what I have set with these keyboard numbers. Which, by the way, I've been changing that on the fly with keyboard shortcuts, so these numbers are probably changing all the time, and I sort of do that without thinking. So I'm glad you asked that. But when I want a harder edge, for example, I will dial opacity up just to really cut that form out. Um, your other question is how are we getting soft edges and hard edges? So let me do a little like sidebar. Um, what's great about this brush is you can change the softness with keyboard shortcuts. So Photoshop brushes have this hardness slider, so it can be like a perfect circle cutout, or it can be fully like airbrush, spray paint kind of feeling. You can change that with the bracket keys, just with Shift and bracket keys. it changes this by 25% increments. Now, that seems like it's this automatic just hard edge, hard brush, soft edge, soft brush, but actually it's more about what you do with like the number of brush strokes and how we tap those things. So let me build up a little soft mark here. And the brush is at 50%, like it's pretty soft. But if I want to make a second form under this, what I'm going to do is press really lightly to kind of needle in this sharp edge. And then I'll start pressing harder to like feather that out. So just by pressing lightly, I actually got a pretty nice sharp edge, even with a pretty soft brush. And if I do that again, trying to press softly and then hammer out and feather, we can actually keep developing that. And with every brush stroke, it sort of sharpens that line more and more. That, like in a nutshell, this is gross. He looks like he has a neck growth or something. So let's get rid of that. But that is like what I'm doing, and I've done it hundreds of times on this face already, is just kind of like light little needle marks, like needling in little fine bits of small marks, and then pressing down to kind of feather that away. So we have like hard edge buffing away to soft edge. But that's kind of the secret sauce with that. It's like a way to do this quickly, which, you know, that's nice, but it also helps you not get bogged down. I think of paintings as something that we have to keep moving pretty fast or they start to just sink into the mud, right? Keep the wheels spinning. And this does a good job of like keeping an effect that you want to get just with one tool, really one process, instead of, for example, like doing lasso selections and then airbrushing within that. You can totally do that, but that's sort of an extra step. And I don't know, another one of those things that like causes that risk of getting mired in something. Cool. Hopefully that answers that. But there's never just one right way to do stuff with well, anything with art in general, but digital art especially. So many different ways to get similar effects. So if nothing else, well, I hope the technique is something you try and find cool. But the idea, the like concept of value edge control, that is everything. That is what, regardless of your technique, will make your stuff look instantly more real, which is power. All right.
We've got a little note from Adam Duff in the chat here.
Hey, hey, what's up, Adam?
Says smiley face, something very interesting how you put high values in nooks, like between the brow and the muscles, or in the sternum between the pecs, that little gap between the muscles.
That is such a great call. I think of those as valley highlights. Another one of my favorites. I grabbed an image that I had done that I think is like the perfect illustration for that. Adam, it's like I planted you in the audience to ask that exact, leave that comment. So thank you. So what I think you're referring to is like this kind of thing. This like there's this highlight weirdly between these two muscle forms. I love that. So what we basically have is like two mountains, right? But there is this little valley. It's like there's this one little moment where the highlight shines most brightly on top of the mountain because these planes are facing the light source. But there's this one little point where these curves turn back upward. So right here, this is facing up, just like these are facing up. Um, this is way too technical, but for all intents and purposes, if we just put a little like brighter value between two other forms, it kind of splits that form into these really distinct like lobes, which I love. That's like what I think of as that like really shrink wrapped level of muscular definition. That's that like truly shredded look is when we have these little definition marks. Um, Valley highlights is what I think of those as for the little mountain metaphor, but everywhere in this guy, like even behind his head, between these huge neck muscles. Um, that's a great call. I don't know. Many of those I want to put on this guy because I want his face to feel kind of like droopy and melting more than definition. I usually break that trick out for like extremes of musculature, like, knock off Incredible Hulk there. But it's definitely a powerful idea and that is a fun use for it. Cool. That might be a good pause point to do a very quick, I promise, like program tour for my mentorship. There's a sort of a second half of this painting that I want to get to, but let me show you guys this. So if you are here kind of considering my mentorship, let's do a quick program tour. So this is a 12-week program. Our next session starts in August, on August 14th. It's a 6-week design module and then a 6-week painting module. Design is actually where I find most artists need the most help with, and it's definitely what I needed the most help with. All of this is built is like what I wish I could give myself 15 years ago to save myself a decade of blindly trying to find answers. So I had a portfolio where it was all rendered things that I was calling concept art because they were weird and interesting, but none of it was actually designed at all. None of it had thoughtful ideation or visual storytelling or shape design principles. So I actually feel like I learned my whole art career kind of backwards because of that. This is designed to help artists with that. And I'm so proud of this like formula that we have this baked into. And it's like such instant transformation happens in these early weeks. So incredibly fun. Actually, one of our earliest exercises is just to design a pile of rocks. And that sounds like the most simple, boring, mundane thing. But what I love is when artists kind of drink the Kool-Aid, get the magic power of shape design in our first 2 weeks, you find that you can actually make a pile of rocks look incredibly professional and thoughtful and well designed. They even end up making portfolio pieces for a lot of our artists. So that's sort of the early weeks of this. We quickly learn to turn academic ideas into skills, into just blank canvas, make something professional looking through a bunch of projects. And what I especially love is the stuff we learn in weeks 1 and 2, it's universal. So we spend the rest of the design module applying this to machine design, environment design, creature design, character design, any like discipline you are interested in specializing in, or if you want to be a generalist like myself, we're going to tackle all of these things. And what we learned here will make you very capable at all of this. And then it's just drilling, repetition, and support. By the way this is all set up is we have a weekly live class where we gather in a small group. I'm a big believer in like small group learning just so that you can see what other artists, with similar goals at similar, phases in their development, what they do. Like we can learn from each other's successes and struggles. So there's that. And there is also essentially constant one-on-one interaction between myself and the artists in the program. You will get feedback from me many times per week, sometimes daily, depending on like which phase of the project we're in. But this is very much a mentorship relationship. And if any of my current or former Academy artists are in the chat, hopefully they will, back me up on this, that I take this really seriously. And I am, very much a presence with you this whole way, whatever kind of support you need. Um, Art is a head game that we play with ourselves, and a lot of the help that I think I can offer is just helping artists remove mental blocks, sort out what feels like it's holding you back, dealing with all the anxieties that come with this, like imposter syndrome and, the daunting mountain to climb that is launching an art career. I'm here for all of that and to make you really good at making the cool stuff that you want to make. So I'm proud of this program and it delivers. So just to jump back into the curriculum, after that we have a painting module, and we're sort of getting a little preview of that kind of stuff here today. But one last specific feature I wanted to highlight is we have the exercise library, which you get access to immediately upon enrollment, by the way. But it's this library of how to paint anything. It's this step-by-step, you download a Photoshop document, and there is a video of me kind of carrying you through how to get different effects. And it's everything from how to paint skies and clouds to rocks and technology and special effects, everything. And that's always kind of, I've added a thing or two over the years to try and make this truly comprehensive. Anything you're likely to encounter, it is in there. And then for the last half of the class, it's all about painting projects, taking what we've learned in the conceptual early weeks of the painting module, and then, painting those designs to portfolio perfection. Now, 12 weeks seems like a long time, but to truly make a professional portfolio, you're probably looking at longer than that. So the support, the like, just click this button and message Hardy and you will get a video back coaching support option, that goes on for a full year. And really, artists in our alumni community, I'm still available to all of them as they would tell you. It's just yeah, something we want to be this comprehensive support system for artists chasing these crazy and fun and amazing goals. One last thing about our alumni community is we just did something really awesome. I'm about to put out a full video about this, but when you join the mentorship, you get put into one of our design houses, kind of like Harry Potter. And we just had our first design house fight, which was absolutely unbelievable. Gave a creative brief and had everybody do these as teams. All of these unbelievably skillful graduates of the program going head to head. It was truly amazing and is going to do good things for them in the long run. So, more on that coming, but just our alum community is very important to us, and we have a team who is here, seeing them through their journey. Cool. That is my elevator sales pitch. If anybody has questions, just email our office account. I see those and I will get back to you. So if you have questions about any aspect of this, I always want to make sure that everybody knows exactly what they're getting. Cool. Sales pitch concluded. Let's paint stuff. And actually we're I don't know, getting to a point where it's feeling pretty well described. It's just, I don't know, this is like the noodling phase, which I bet you can all identify with, where it's sort of, I don't know, it's kind of done, but I bet we could keep messing with it forever. And that is true of this, but getting there.
We got
Um,
a question. It's kind of an interesting one. Someone's asking, How much would you say a person can learn just from watching free YouTube videos and tutorials instead of actually getting a mentorship and signing up for courses?
That is such a great question. I feel like I learned a lot of what I learned about concept art came from Feng Zhu's design channel. Just if you are like a aspiring concept artist, could not recommend that channel highly enough. Now, like that being said, I don't think I was able to watch every video on that channel and feel ready to work or feel like I was really masterful. So, to level with you, like the information in the curriculum is knowledge that exists in many different places, in books and YouTube channels and just stuff I have picked up over the years. So that's actually why the curriculum is amazing, but the greatest asset is not that. It's the support and the coaching that I think the short answer is you can. In fact, I kind of feel like that is more or less the path that I took. But what a mentorship does is takes a lot of years off of the journey, saves you an unbelievable amount of like time wandering, wondering why am I not getting the result that I want, even though I did what the YouTuber said. That's something that that is a big part of the value that I think a lot of art mentorships deliver. And it's certainly what the goal has been with mine. So it's more of a just how much do you want to fast track? How disciplined are you too? Because accountability is a huge piece of this, right? And if you are, you know, a very high achieving self, motivator and you're not in any like huge rush to reach, the top of concept art mountain, you absolutely can study on your own. Um, but I think the value that mentorships add, the value that if I'm speaking to this artist directly and I think you should join my mentorship, I can save you an awful lot of time and headache and I'm betting spark a few light bulbs that you wouldn't have figured out elsewhere or conclusions that we arrive at after just trial and error for a long time. But that's a really important and good question. Cool.
Someone's wondering, should a beginner practice this on a complex subject as a face or start more simple, like primitives?
Such a good question. Totally. I think just like simple things like spheres and even, that's the old art school bowl of fruit is nice just because there are spherical forms kind of bouncing light off one another. So absolutely. I do faces because they are organic forms. Like I can do a lot of this value edge sculpting, and it really has this cool, immediate, realistic effect. So faces make good demos, but you're right. Like if you're not feeling airtight on anatomy and that kind of, plane and edge control, absolutely, I would not recommend diving into faces because painting people, I think, is about the most complex challenge an artist can undertake. Just, obviously it's a very technically demanding form that absolutely everybody is so dialed into spotting even the most minor nuance. Um, and and there's all this psychological baggage, right? Like you could succeed perfectly at making a realistic three-dimensional looking human, but what if your viewer, it just reminds them of somebody who is mean to them in high school, so they don't like it, right? So people are hard. Um, the short version is yes, I would say maybe a more simple subject. If you're kind of just getting comfortable with the brush, with like mark making like this, totally. Let's not dive into the deep end immediately. It's funny, the more I like obliterate this guy's jawline, the more he feels kind of I don't know, a little sinister. I'm having a lot of fun with so much of my time like trying to develop as a people artist. It's this there's this like magnetism drawing us towards painting beautiful, objectively like movie star beautiful people. So it tends to like your work gets sort of homogenized into just being that standard, hero chiseled jaw dude or Hollywood stars type of looks. What I'm having a lot of fun is like, so for example, a strong jawline is one of those just beautifying features we can add to a male character. But I'm sort of having a blast like obliterating that, like turning this guy into sort of sunken in chin, um, old man like jawline wrinkles. And I think it totally fits how he's sort of like skulking back into the corners of his jacket. Um, Trying to do like some little pockmarks or, imperfections in his skin, especially in these mid-tone areas where light and dark interact. That's a huge, we can communicate so much information just by putting little marks on that margin. So, for example, with a single brushstroke on the tip of his nose, it's a wart, right? But if I made that same brush mark somewhere else, it wouldn't have as much of an effect. So the midtone, that zone where shadow turns to dark, is like crazy how powerful that is.
Hardy, how do you avoid your pieces feeling overworked? Like when there's too many layers of details and you aren't supposed to be there. Someone's struggling to fix their art when it gets to that point.
That is awesome. And I empathize with that very much. Um, That's another like the whole like wa lost in the concept art wilderness years for me was I was chasing detail above all else. I thought I could be the hardest working concept artist and that would equal success if I could just detail more than everybody else. I have come to see like mastery not as just how much detail and realism can you add, but how much can you communicate with the simplest forms possible? So that has led me to where I currently see the ideal, which is shapes. Like, how can I actually, at this phase of a painting, what I'm trying to do is simplify these things. Like, instead of all of these marks, I'm starting to just sample these things and like just paint back in a pretty solid form, like my opacity will start drifting up. Um, but the answer to your question is if you look at it at small scale, like our navigator window, always keep this up in Photoshop for this reason. If it's working at small scale, that usually means that your shapes are doing the description. Really, that stuff that we did at the very beginning of the video, which is like just defining those eye shadows, the cheekbones. Um, I'm trying to sort of bring those shadow shapes back because a complex form that reads mostly as just like the highlight shape, like this form, and then the shadow shape, if it looks like that, you will get it and that will read well. It won't become this fussy, overworked thing that you kind of end up hating. And it's, God, that's one of the most frustrating things, right? It's like I've been polishing this thing for days and I liked the sketch better. Like the sketch felt more real and human than this painting I have been just agonizing over for days. Like, how could that be? And I want to quit art because of that. So the answer is let's make it more about shapes. And it's usually kind of a value range thing of like, let's sort of push our value descriptions over into like team highlight or team shadow. Try and keep things a little more limited and constrained in your value range. Um, that is abstract, and this is one of those things I love doing, like uh, paint overs for artists in the program because that really helps to crystallize it with a before and after. But that thing you are describing is very fixable, and I that is such an answer I was looking for a really long time. So I love hearing that question and there is good news. Cool. You know what? I think I am sort of in noodle zone here, so I'm going to call like the basic form description done. As fun as it is to paint these little like wattle neck forms and just further obliterate this dude's jawline. Let's leave it at that. He probably needs some eyes, and then I want to do a really fun like light drama thing. Oh, this is really fun. If you save your sketch layer. Now, I've been trying very hard to make this work without the need for line art at all. I think if we're like painting with shapes and really defining edges very well, then we can actually leave our line art behind, like we don't need it anymore. But it's fun to keep because the little wrinkled parts of our face, like where actual ambient occlusion happens, like wrinkles of the eye, that is a place where the actual shapes of light and dark, like the value sculpting, actually does make a line. So I love to keep that layer handy so that I can make a selection out of it and then paint, I think this is black or, nearly black within that selection. And it just really adds something. It kind of makes the eyes instantly like sharper and more defined. And it also helps me because I can remember where this guy's gaze, was steering. I love that. He
I've got
looks,
a question about color scale.
yeah,
Does choosing an underpainting color other than grayscale, such as brownish tones, affect the ease of adding color later, particularly for skin tones? Do you ever start in grayscale with the intent to colorize, like Christoph Young's process? And how do you approach taking such a painting to a full color render?
that is a great. I was gonna invoke Christoph Young again because I don't usually try to colorize grayscale paintings because it creates problems that I have an easier time just going another way. Christoph does, and he is the most successful artist at it ever. But his he is an incredibly like analytical and scientific art thinker. So that's part of what gives him that superpower. Um, what I usually do is I start with a value painting with this weird orange color that's totally arbitrary with a dark cyan base. And then I add like this red underpainting later. It's sort of a different like that's it's a bigger topic and I might send you to another video of mine. Um, But the basic idea is to do like a reddish underpainting after we make our value layer look like an off-white. So it's sort of like pale skin that then we put blood under, as gross as that sounds. It's like we breathe the life, put the circulatory system into this face, and it starts feeling, you know, alive. Now, with color, the key there is hue variation, like having the nose and cheeks and lips and ears be a little more pinkish and red with like light-skinned individuals like this guy. Um, and then like letting the scalp and the stubble, zones keep a little more of that green underneath. So to answer your question, that like um the underpainting or the base layer being that dark cyan, and this is the color that I use if anybody wants this hex code 091A19. Um, I use that precisely because if I don't paint pink on top of this, it lets this cool show through and it looks like stubble. Um, yeah, that's a bigger topic, so sorry for the quick answer, but I'll talk about that for another hour if I don't stay on subject. That would be a good live. All right, giving him a Spartacus chin and then let's call that part done. How many times have I said that yet? All right, cool. Let's let's add some drama to this guy. And you might already know what I'm gonna do because this is one of my favorite tricks. But like basically this guy feels relatively evenly lit. Like light coming from up here. This side of his face is brighter, but it falls off to shadow, which gives us these cool, like, cast shadows from his nose. His brow is sending this line across his cheekbone, which all, to go to that earlier question, makes the shapes of the face a nice, easy read. Like you can see that even small, that this reads as a face. And I can even like get this guy's attitude and a lot of the humanity is coming through there just from this. So we've got that, but it's also a little boring, right? It's just like some dude in a white room. So let's add some mood and drama to this by essentially turning the lights out with a multiply layer, and this is when like color lookups can be really fun. Which actually let me show you guys what this thing is. I didn't know this existed forever, but a color lookup is a Photoshop adjustment, and it's right here. It's glorified Instagram filters basically, but it like adds this kind of stuff. So for a grayscale painting, it gives it a little something to make it interesting. I love that. Anyway, that one, this is film stock if you are interested. All right, so multiply layer on top. I basically filled in the silhouette with a gray, set that to multiply, and that's looking kind of too dark, so I'm bringing the opacity down a little bit. Now, this is the fun part, is add a mask and paint black on the mask. So what that essentially amounts to is like we are hiding the shadow or painting with light, right? And the one I always go to first with this is like film noir stripe of light across the eyes. Like, it's a movie poster suddenly. Actually feels even more like Sin City now, which is kind of cool. Um, Actually, that was remarkably effective for like just a couple of brushstrokes, but we do have to kind of be thoughtful with this a little bit, like not just gouging a stripe across the guy's face, but like this cheekbone would be turned away from that, for example. So let's bring some more of that dark back. But God, I love that. And now it's like the light is telling a story. It's like, where is this guy? What is happening? I don't know. He looks like he's in some interesting environment, and there's just mood and story and all of these cool things that start to happen when we use light as a story. Oh, and if Adam Duff is still lurking, dude, I totally stole this from you. Light as a storytelling technique, that is Adam Duff's right there. So definitely give this kind of thing a try. Like I can't get enough of this. I usually try it with more or less every painting I do. So this dragon, I painted the whole thing and did this at the end, and it looks like he's just sort of peeking out of a shadow. Um, this thing is disgusting just as a warning, but same thing here. It's like somebody put a spotlight on this monster and he hates the light. So it's like we can tell a story with these things. Um, cool. Now, finishing touches on this, and then I think we will call this more or less good to go. But any questions on any of that, guys, as I just sort of final polish this guy?
Definitely questions, and we've got a response from Adam if you're curious. He goes, how dare you give away the great drama hack, Hardy? How dare you? Greta voice in brackets.
Video file not found. Cease and desist.
Uh, he goes, I can't believe you have a name for that, LOL. Yeah, that's exactly what I'm talking about. Valley highlights. I'm totally ripping that off.
Do it. Now we're even. Perfect. I feel better.
We had someone, I think it was a really valuable question. They say, I find myself in an endless cycle of self-study and I don't know how to make finished complete work without feeling like it's not enough. What would your advice be?
Oh, God, really very good questions. It's like my inner monologue asked all the questions today. Um, I hear you on that one. So that's just kind of the when is anything done? Kind of impossible to answer question. Um, what has helped me with that? Because I will just work on something forever and eventually, invariably polish it to death. Like it will become so detailed and so fussy that like I, there will be no life or expressiveness in it. What I try to do is as soon as it feels like it might be done, like, okay, this is done. I leave it alone for 24 hours, like absolutely disengage from that artwork if you can. Now, if it's got a deadline, sometimes you cannot. But if it's work for yourself or for your portfolio, put it on a shelf for a full day or two. Like you want to just sort of clear it from your short-term art brain. Um, Now, after that, when you can look at it with fresh eyes, which is this remarkable thing, first of all, when you can actually reset your eyeballs like that, it's um, incredibly useful. But if it looks done to you still, then that's awesome. Like, we're good. Send it, post it, whatever. But if you see something you want to change, and I usually do, give it one more good sitting. So that could be a full day at your desk or a half day or one late night. One more. We're going to open this thing up and unlock it. I'm going to work on it to do every last thing I can think of. And then I just have to like lock it away. It has to just disappear after that. Otherwise, it will call to me in the middle of the night to come do some more color dodging or some more specular highlights or some more whatever, and I'll never leave it alone. So that is my own personal crutch for that. It's not perfect, but it keeps me from I have to kind of move on to the next thing eventually, and that keeps me from that like cycle of just maybe I could add a little bit more. And ooh, you know what else I should add? Like it sort of just has to be done. Another thing about that I think is also kind of hopeful is what I think you're describing is art that is super precious to you, which sounds very Lord of the Rings, but I had an art director call me out on that when every sketch I sent was this hyper polished thing. He said, like, okay, man, like, we don't have to be quite so precious. Like, the more paintings you do and the more you know in your heart that this one's cool, but I can do this again if I have to. Like you've got the skills. You've been here before and you can do it again. That kind of confidence will make you just be like, yeah, this is a cool one. It's not perfect, but I liked it. I think it'll fill a portfolio need or it'll make my client happy and on to the next thing. Um, when everything is a masterpiece and, if you've got 100 hours invested in something, that thing you're describing is really hard to avoid. So the takeaway, the word to take away from that is trying to be less precious with our art. Not saying like stop caring, but start. What am I trying to say? Like, know that you can do this again. The thing you're working on is not your once in a lifetime masterpiece. It's just another awesome thing that you made and you can make again tomorrow. Um, by the way, like little last minute effects that I'm doing is just some blurring at the edges. I kind of like how the color lookup starts making this feel sort of like an old photo that had bokeh effect or, some kind of focal depth blurring. And it also sort of fits with this weird white void background. Like I don't know. It makes it kind of surreal. So I've just been blurring things out on the edge, which also kind of just hammers focus right at your eyes, right at his eyes, which I think helps too. And I've also been painting a little bit of a glow, just something clipped to this layer to, make it not quite such an absolute of a silhouette, but something that sort of fades, something that a little bit of that light is like spilling around. Also, he has like baby hair sprouting off the top. But I think I'll call that done, which ties into that question. Or if I feel like it's not done, I'll come look at it tomorrow and decide if I really think it's done or not. But like, you know what? We'll call that one good enough. Guys, that's my demo. So like value sculpting and also value drama and like storytelling with light. Um, all of that stuff hopefully is another cool kit in your toolkit that will help you. But thanks for hanging out. Any questions on any of this or on the mentorship? I'm happy to hang back for a little bit if we have any Q&A.
I was muted. There was a follow-up question to timing. Someone was asking, how long do you typically spend on the underlying sketch of your characters and portraits? And do you use references for faces or emotions when drawing?
Um, the sketch we started with here, I bet probably under an hour for this one. I mean, pretty quick. Actually, I spent time like dialing in how weird I wanted to go with proportions versus how like realistic. So not very long, but I've been practicing this a lot lately. So that goes pretty quick. And actually, even the value step goes pretty efficiently for me. But that is definitely, repetition for sure. And just not so much just like your hand physically gets faster, but you get quicker with decisions. Like, I know what shape I'm gonna want this to be because I have painted that shape so many times. That kind of stuff really hits the gas for you. As for references, I actually don't think I used many for this guy. But I've been incredibly steeped in anatomy and face references for myself, working on this exact an anatomy resource guide. So I sort of just have all that filed away. Now, that being said, I absolutely use references. So I'm sure the my client wouldn't mind if I showed this, but like this character I painted for Wild Imaginary West, it started with a photo that I took like a dork with my webcam of me with like a leg up on that chair behind me, pointing at something. The human factor is this incredibly hard, nuanced thing to capture. So start with a reference to kind of just make sure that from the jump in its bones, there's something real going on there. This, I'm pretty proud of how human, sort of, this guy feels from invention, but I certainly get out of my depth on that, especially when it's something more nuanced than just sort of menacing glare to the side. That's pretty easy. There's not much to do there, but for all of that subtlety and nuance to capture the human factor, to have a full figure like doing something human with their hands, or, what exact expression do you want to convey with something? You will feel cringy, but fire up your webcam, like quick time, start a new movie, and go act it out, and then just delete it permanently, and no one will ever see it. But that's an incredibly useful thing. I actually saw a making of Arcane recently. Those animators at Fortiche had this reference room that just had a bunch of cameras set up so that they could all, go act things out and like fall over tables and look like they were getting possessed by magic, and just that stuff really works. And honestly, the hardest step is getting over how weird you feel doing it. But yeah, I'm here to confess I do that all the time, and it works. Like it just gives you that instant human factor that I find pretty fun. This guy was me too, which you can see the resemblance for sure. But that kind of stuff. Photo refs are absolutely your friend, but just for this particular one, I actually did not. Kind of just felt my way through. Cool question.
Do you think we got time? We've got a comment and then another question. If
Okay.
there's yeah. The comment is just about what you're saying earlier regarding like knowing when to stop. Someone said, kind of tearful a bit, wish I heard this while I was teaching myself art because I kept feeling like every new piece I make was a mistake and I don't know how to replicate it. Imposter syndrome is a really hard one. So that was
Yeah.
someone's comment. I think they really appreciated hearing that.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, I mean, everyone is a stepping stone, right? And some of the memorable, most impactful pieces of art in my life are ones that I think were just spectacular failures. I spent more or less a semester during grad school working on this piece at nights that I was sure was going to launch my concept art career. I mean, hundreds of hours on this. I was detailing with a 1 pixel brush every pebble on a leather glove, only to kind of arrive at a final product where I was just sort of like, so what? Like, yeah, that's a lot of detail, but nobody cared, and it was not really valuable as concept art. I think about that one a lot, and you know, I sure wouldn't choose to do that experience again, but that one was the light bulb moment that I needed of just like, nobody's asking for that one pixel brush thing. So what's important? What's really going to make my art valuable? I mean, it's all valuable, but like industry focused, like hire me awesomeness versus just kind of, am I just whipping myself to try and study, in the name of self-improvement? Um, so I'm really glad to hear that. Those were not failures. Those were just the scars to prove that you've gotten where you are. But totally, imposter syndrome is a real thing and something we all need to just help each other with. But I'm glad to hear that.
James R., I think he missed when you were explaining the mentorship earlier. Just wondering if you could sort of describe what that process looks like a bit more.
Totally. So let's say you enroll in the mentorship today. What that will put you on our class list, which will be a small group. Class starts on August 14th. That will be our first kickoff class where we meet as a group, one weekly live class on Thursdays at 11 a.m., by the way. So if you're 11 a.m. Central US time, if you're in another part of the world, if you're at work, it's actually not that big of a deal because everything is recorded. But the most meaningful part of the whole experience is that I will be working with you very directly, very often. You'll be getting feedback from me on your work, your exercises. I am available for questions and support if you feel lost or out of your depth, or if you are you know, feeling freaked out about job prospects or imposter syndrome or any of the blocks that artists have to, you know, navigate around. That's what I can, be as your mentor for this. And I am here for all of it. Like really, I think it has to be kind of a holistic approach, or I can make you awesome at art and I can make you believe that you can do hard things, but we kind of have to do all of those things for those goal milestones to be achieved. And that works. Now, week to week, it's a 12-week program. Each week there will be a different, essentially, homework assignment. We're working on machine design projects this week, for example, or, painting projects. There will be an assignment. It's this very mapped out, regimented thing to try and give structure, but not stress. You can expect about 5 hours of work per week. We inevitably have just overachievers in every class, so some will go way overboard, but I try to make sure that does not affect everyone else's expectation. And then there is this design house. So you get put into a essentially platform where you have access to the curriculum, access to me, access to live classes, and a chat community with everyone else in the class. So you guys can kind of share the journey. I sort of feel like learning alone sucks. So having compatriots in there is great for accountability and just, not feeling like you're lone wolfing it quite so much. It's a 12-week program, 6 weeks of design, 6 weeks of painting, but then a full year of ongoing support as artists continue to build portfolio pieces and navigate the job world. I am available to all of our current students and alums who need any kind of support with that. And we also have like really cool alum events for artists who have graduated the program. We just had Battle of the Brushes, where the three design houses, kind of like Harry Potter houses, all all fought each other, and we gave away prizes. Had some unbelievably cool judges one of whom may or may not be lurking in the chat today, help us out with that. So it's this very full journey support at every step, no matter where the artist is. So we ask a lot of our artists, but it provides a lot. And I think I know that I take the goals of anyone who enrolls very seriously. And I'm really proud of it. It has delivered some really cool results and has become this really great community a few years in now. So definitely something worth your while if you have the time available for it. Hope that answers that. If you have any other questions, our office email, just office@digitalpaintingstudio.com. You'll get an answer from me about that. And if you want to send me your portfolio link, if you're not sure, if you're like out of your depth or something, do I have the skill level to even start this or any questions like that, send it to me. I will say, even if you're not like a master, we have artists of just about all skill levels in the academy. You do not have to be like very accomplished to do beautifully in this. The only like the prerequisite line that I would set is just having a good grasp of art fundamentals and digital painting app fundamentals because we do jump into like actually making drawings and art pretty immediately. So if somebody's still figuring out their tools, that could put you a little bit behind, but happy to answer those questions too. Um, nice. Celine, I was going to land it there unless there was any just must answer questions left in the chat. What do you think?
Yeah, I think we're good. I think there's people have your email so they can send them to you. And yeah, I can't wait to see the video next week or when it comes out of the
I can't.
alumni.
I'm very excited about this. Battle of the Brushes was awesome, and I can't wait to brag about everybody. Cool. Guys, we'll call it a day. Thanks for coming to check this out, and please do email if you have any questions. But hope this was useful, and we'll see you next time. Cheers.